Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Christian Recorder Dialogues. We have a special guest today, and to introduce this special guest, we've had with us the Reverend Morgan Dixon, Morris Brown class of 1998. Reverend Dixon?
I am excited and honored to introduce the Reverend Dr. Herman Skip Mason Jr., a renowned historian and who is also the senior pastor of historic West Mitchell Christian Methodist Episcopal Church in Atlanta, Georgia. He is a very proud native Atlantan and an honors graduate of APS. He matriculated through Morris Brown College, and he continued his education at Atlanta University, which is now CAU, and earned a master's degree in library and information science with a concentration in African American studies and archives museum management. He is also a graduate of the ITC, the Interdenominational Theological Center in Atlanta, where he obtained the Master of Divinity and the Doctor of Ministry degrees, respectively. Skip, as he is affectionately known, is a very seasoned individual and is no stranger to Atlanta. He's the author of numerous books and on the history of African Americans and experience in Atlanta, Georgia, and the South, and has published over 10 books, including Black Atlanta in the Roaring Twenties, Black Entertainment in Atlanta, African American Life in DeKalb County, Politics, Law, and Civil Rights in Atlanta, Black American Series, East Point, Georgia, and several others. He is a former international president of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, and he helped to bring about the historic Martin Luther King Memorial in Washington, D.C. under his leadership. We are excited to welcome him to the AME family, certainly as a Brownite. And so without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Editor Thomas.
Thank you, Reverend Dixon. And as the son of a Brownite, I am excited to have you here. And thank you, Reverend Dixon. And we know you'll be in the background. Morgan, as well, as been curating our Black College series. And you'll be seeing more for next year when we go for round 2 of celebrating AME schools. Thanks, Reverend, and we'll hear from you later. So, yes, Reverend Mason.
Hey.
My friend, I remember you when I was at Morehouse, and it is indeed an honor to have you here with us. Many of you may or may not know, but my father was a proud Brownite, class of 1939, and 5 of my 6 aunts went to Morris Brown. So it is indeed delightful to have you here, Brother Reverend Mason, not just as to talk about Morris Brown, but also to talk about your denomination, the CME Church. From last year to this year, you have been spearheading the celebration of the CME's, and I'm only going to use this word once, sesquicentennial. That's a fancy word for 150th anniversary. So we wanted to bring you on to talk to you about how the CMEs have celebrated this important landmark and to share this with the AME family. And again, for those of you who are here, please feel free to put your bishop, your church in the chat. And also for our CME brothers and sisters that are here, please feel welcome because we're all part of one big Black Methodist family. Welcome, Reverend Mason, to us.
Well, Brother John, thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, I don't know how we let you get to Morehouse coming from a Morris Brown College family, but I'm glad you went to Morehouse because it was there where I met you and your great brilliance. But so delighted to be here with you. Let me correct, I'm not spearheading. I'm a part of the Commission on Archives and History that is working with the College of Bishops as we celebrated our sesquicentennial. In fact, next weekend, or rather this weekend, we will celebrate our 151st anniversary. And so it has been an exciting year for us to revisit our past, but, you know, in that Sankofa moment to look forward to the future with the General Conference coming. But I appreciate the opportunity to share with you. I'm so proud of you and the tremendous work that you're doing with the African Methodist Episcopal Church, both as its editor and the technological feats that you and your team are doing to provide and bring the best of the AME Church to social media and to the general public. So I'm glad to be here with you. We've been doing a lot last December under the leadership of Bishop Henry M. Williamson, the presiding prelate of the first, our senior bishop, and the College of Bishops. They unveiled a spectacular 2 or 3 hour 150th anniversary celebration that it was virtual, obviously, because of the pandemic, but we really got a chance to really understand the rich history, the uniqueness, and the flavor of what was known once as the Colored Methodist Episcopal Church, now the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. And since that time, we have been doing a number of things throughout the Zion, various districts, various parts of our church have been celebrating in their own way. The Commission on Archives and History conducted a number of wonderful workshops, lectures in which your historiographer and my friend, Dr. Teresa Fry Brown, was our keynote speaker. And so we've had a number of activities. And, you know, in my trying to manage my boredom during the pandemic, in March of 2020, I started a series of Sunday afternoon shows called Conversations with Dr. Skip. And it allowed me to really go through our church leaders. It was only supposed to be one show, one episode, and that was with Bishop Lakey. And when I finished with Bishop Lakey, one of our beloved, hardworking members of our technology team called me and she said, well, one of the other bishops said, when are you going to interview him? And so that began, seriously, that began what was to be one show. It led to now almost 1.5 years of shows, but I'm enjoying it. I get to sit down with bishops and church leaders, lay pastors, our youth. I get to talk about the history of our church, some which not previously known, some omitted from some of the major network programs.
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there.
You know, but it's been a great year. All of us need to stop and take time to reflect on our history. Bishop Othel Hawthorne Lakey, the 44th bishop of the church, and our historian emeritus, of course, wrote the first definitive history of the church. Now, Reverend Dr. Raymond Somerville has picked up. We have many pastors and lay writing books. So I've featured authors. And then, of course, at some point in time, we'll talk about the book that I'm working on. It's almost 1 year overdue, but we ran into to a few technical difficulties and some challenges with my designer, but we're moving along. And I hope to have this book ready by the time we go to the General Conference. But this is a time for us to really reflect, look back, but move forward. There's a lot of work to be done, as you well know, being so deeply involved in the church. But I appreciate the opportunity to come and share. One of the things I want to highlight that at the General Conference, each Episcopal district will have a historical display.
Wow.
That will be the centerpiece of our 151st conference. And so we're working to get the details out, and we're inviting and asking them to bring artifacts, to do banners, however they want to tell the story of their particular district. So I'm really excited about that. We are in a period of time where understanding, particularly when our government and other entities want to erase not our history, but the history of African Americans, where they are afraid of these conversations and discussions. You know, this critical race theory, which in essence removes the conversation about some of those hard-hit parts of our history. So as a church, which has been the solid foundation and the string of continuity throughout the African American experience, we have to tell our story. We have to tell it locally. We have to tell our church history. We have to tell the district history. And of course, we have to tell the history as a whole of how the AME Church came into being, how the CME Church, the AME Zion Church, the Baptist, and all of these other denominations came in. One of the shows I did, John, was a show that I entitled The Rest of the Story.
I remember that one. I saw that one. And for those of y'all who have not seen Dr. Mason's work, you can go to the CME. I believe they're on the CME website.
They are on the CME
as well
website.
As the CME Facebook page. All the videos are there. And I've gone through and seen some of them. But this one, I know when this one came about, the other side of the story. So tell us about this one.
So as I was watching in utter disdain, but great appreciation to the work of Henry Louis Gates, but disdain because
the other skip.
The other skip,
yes.
The other skip, that so many aspects of the history of the church, the Black church, was omitted. I understand you can't put everything in, but we had some expectation that the CME church would be included because the producers contacted us. We submitted. We weren't just omitted. They contacted us. The bishop, senior bishop, asked me to share. I shared photos, I shared material information. We didn't know how they were going to use it, but not to even have a single mention, not to have one sentence, that said, that out of the Methodist Episcopal Church South, the Christian Methodist, Colored Methodist Church Road, that we have all of these wonderful historic schools, Lane College, Payne College, Miles College.
I was surprised that Lane wasn't in. I will say that surprised me as well, because I mean that really
it did. So after I got out of my feelings, and it did take me a minute to get out of it, I said, well, we have our own instrument. And so I began with veracity and speed to put together programming with my little platform to tell our stories, some known, unknown, to bring in some of our historians and scholars and lay, just to talk about the CME Church. So while we were omitted, it did give us an opportunity to move forward. We need and hope to do a documentary on our church. We have to tell our own story, and we can't depend on that. I saw my good friend and brother, young man I pledged in Alpha, Dr. Mark Tyler, a few weeks ago down in Brunswick, Georgia. And he shared with me, and I'm not being political or anything, but he shared with me, that his desire to run for historiographer. And Mark and I share that passion and love for the history of our churches as well. And so that's what we have to do, put ourselves in positions to continue to foster, tell the story, and put it out. If we're not telling it where it can reach the masses, then we're not really telling it, and so we got to do book, but we got to do video, we got to do social media, we got to do Instagram, Facebook. All of these platforms give us a wonderful opportunity, combine YouTube as well, to put our story out and to make sure that our people know, and that the children understand and know as well.
You know, one of the things, means you hit on a lot of the things that we talked about. So we're going to be unpacking this for the rest of our time here. But if we could just stay on this documentary, I know before the General Conference, Reverend Tyler, it was Bishop McKenzie and Dr. Tyler who came up with the brainchild of these documentaries through the AME Anvil program, the Anvil. And you know, I remember when we did the first documentary, and if for those of you who are watching, if you didn't see the show, we did a show talking about the first two documentaries that were done leading up to AME Next. And they talked about the fact that people didn't believe that a documentary could be done until they saw it. And I'll just keep on with you, even though Bishop McKenzie was featured prominently in the first part of this documentary by Henry Louis Gates. The second part is as if, you know, the AME Church of the past, and then we move on to these persons speaking for the future. Now, again, I appreciated the documentary. It's a great place to start, and it's a place to open discussion. But I was troubled when I saw that for the second part of the documentary, there were almost no voices from historically Black denominations. I said to myself, how can you tell our story without speaking to churches, but you're pulling from people who are in what we know to be historically white denominations? I was going to leave that there and sit that there. But just because we were seen as the history doesn't mean that I don't appreciate us not being seen as the present or future in that documentary, which is why, to your point, it's important for us to tell our own story.
We have to.
Tyler's done 2 of those documentaries. The third one is being produced now, AME Next, and we were privileged to assist with that. So he's doing final interviews with that, and both documentaries, for those of you all watching, that are completed, Echoes from the General Conference, and the second one escapes me right now, but they're both on the AME Church YouTube. But you had to help plan the celebration of a church in the middle of a pandemic. What discussions, tell me the thought process behind how you all were able to adapt the celebration, because this was supposed to be huge. And you end up having to run it all online. So tell us about how you were able to do this. Like, I couldn't imagine having to do this. And given that you had to do this in the pandemic, what do you think about the results?
Well, I think that really in hindsight now, we could not have asked for a better platform than social media, because everyone was in a place where they could access it. Pastors, preachers had to learn how to manage and get their worship services online quick, fast, in a hurry. And that was a lesson of March of 2020 when the pandemic hit and we pretty much shut down the churches. But there was a great committee, great talent within the church. Shout out to Kelly Williamson, the daughter of Bishop Williamson, who really managed the technical process, editing a new version of the CME's hymn, Rapture Soul, was beautifully done, and people were able to share historic vignettes and people from all across the land. And so you brought everything to technology, to your computer, to your iPad, to YouTube, and we were able to celebrate it. I think, however, that the General Conference is going to have a modality of celebration. Not only we're celebrating the General Conference, but I think we're going to do what is it? Past celebration, pick up and celebrate our sesquicentennial. And I think that's going to be exciting. The energy is going to be there, the excitement. You know, we haven't had a General Conference, in 4 years or so. And so it's going to be exciting. We come from a tradition like the AMEs of grandeur and protocol, and hymns and songs of celebration and great preaching, and using technology. And I know Bishop Marvin Frank Thomas out of the 2nd Episcopal District is the bishop chairing the General Conference. And I'm certainly going to employ great technology, and we got to utilize that technology in this celebration. But we're looking forward to, I'm excited about the videos that you all have done, the documentaries. I have not seen them, can't wait to see them. And I'm looking forward to working with our Commission on Archives and History as we hope to produce some things. We're working on our archives project. We're collecting from across the country. So it's a lot of work to be done. And if we don't do it, we cannot depend on anyone else to tell our story. We cannot depend on anyone else to collect our history, that which is still around, because so much has been destroyed, thrown out for lack of knowledge, for lack of attention to care. But now is the time to do that. And you know, John, having this meeting to get people virtually, you know, I have a lot of favorite shows, but the one where I had the pioneering women in our church, the first woman to run for bishop, the first woman to be elected for bishop, the committee that pulled it together to ensure that we would get the commission on women in ministry. Some of these groundbreaking preachers, the first female presiding elder, and having them all on one show. I said, I'll never do a show like that again, because I had a total of about 20 women trying to manage StreamYard, where you can only get 8 or 9 on at a time, and trying to time it. But to have all of them, you know, you can now find footage of, we found footage of Bishop Jefferson Snorton as they were tallying the vote, and the excitement and the energy was electric, and you could feel that. So it is what you're doing, what you've done, and what I try to do is to maximize technology, because this is here to stay. This is here to stay. This is how we tell our story. We're having renovation done on historic West Mitchell Street, CME Church. Shout out to all my West Mitchell members. I sent y'all the link. You're supposed to be watching now. If not, you'll watch later. But we're having new screens, monitors placed in the church, new audio upgrade. I'm excited, because that's where we're going to blend the past, the present, and the future each Sunday morning, you know, as we celebrate, you know, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So, you know, just making the best of what we had. And so the pandemic meant us some harm, but, you know, God turned that around for great good in our church for our celebration. And this Saturday's 151st celebration will be virtual. And then on Sunday, I'm kind of doing a follow-up as we talk about Phillips School of Theology, Pastors Conference, and the anniversary of Phillips. And then we're going to segue and talk about the impact of our church in our 151st year.
Wow, that is so much richly to take all in. And you told us what your favorite show was. I've watched several of them. And before we go to our commercial, I just want to say publicly that part of the inspiration for doing these TCR dialogues was seeing the work that you did, because I realized that, you know, because candidly, like I run a newspaper. Like, I didn't plan on becoming a producer for stuff, but seeing the depth and regularity and the possibility of doing a virtual series. So I just want people to know, those of you all watching, that we borrow from our brothers and sister churches. We borrow from our family. And I just want to thank you for being one of the inspirations for us doing this work.
Well, you're very kind. That's what we preachers do. We hear something somebody says, oh, and it sends a chill, and we say, I got to preach. And so the first time you preach it, you give the preacher or whoever the author was credit. And then the second time you might slightly allude to it, and then the third time it's all yours. You know how we do in the church, you know.
Now, I ain't no preacher. Now, let's be clear. Now, I've no bishop has laid hands on my head, but definitely
but you're not a preacher in that vein, but you minister through the spoken word.
Yes, that is the ministry of writing, as my friend
ministry of writing. That is a gift, and people wait in anticipation for the Christian Recorder, for the official organ and journal to come. You know, and I don't know whether you have virtual electronic issues of it, but people cherish those magazines. They cherish the journal. They cherish what's going on. It's a chronicle of what is happening. It's history on paper. That's how we've been able to write books, you know, through these wonderful resources. And now it's in your lap, you know, to continue the rich tradition of this great organ.
Well, we're going to take a commercial break right now, and we'll come back for the next part of our dialogue with Dr. Mason.
All right.
The AME Church Publishing House provides a diverse array of products to meet the worship and Bible study needs of believers of all ages. Our church school materials, hymnal, and book of worship are available in print as well as digitally through Amazon.com. Our premier product is the Liberating Faith Studies Church School Curriculum Weekly. We host an interactive virtual connectional church school. Free digital worship resources are available on imame.org to help you observe the Christian calendar and special days. We look forward to your virtual visit to amecpublishing.com and welcoming you in person at our new headquarters in Nashville in spring 2022.
And we're back. So we left off, we were talking about the general conference for the CME Church. You will be the first PAM we had both AME Zion and AME had our general conferences this year.
Yes.
So we're hoping that when you have yours in 2 years, we will be fully past the pandemic as much as we're going to be.
Well, if Omicron will let us be great.
If Omicron will let us
be great. Yeah.
But so what are your expectations for this general conference? You all have, as I understand it, up to 3 bishops will be elected, and there will be a turnover of several general officers. And this is the first time you all have met as a corporate body during the pandemic. So tell me, what are your expectations for this meeting?
Well, you know better than anyone that there's always a level of intensity when you have to elect bishops at a general conference. I think the last one that we had, we did not elect anyone. And so it's been almost 8 years, I believe. And so there is great intensity, great excitement. You know, the question, will sister pastors be elected bishop? We have 3 who have offered themselves, and they are equally qualified and capable to serve our church in the highest office. So you have that piece as well. You know, the strategic plan that the College of Bishops are working on. And then, you know, general matters and issues that come before the church during a quadrennium. You know, the committee works, the resolutions, all of that. And just the excitement of a general conference in itself, you know, but differently because we are coming post-pandemic, we hope, you know, so things are going to be different. And I know our folks have watched the work that you all have done, and as you carry your hybrid general conference as well, and the AME Zion Church. So great excitement going to Cincinnati, rich in history, particularly with the Underground Railroad and all. And so that adds that other level to that. But I'm excited. I'm honored to be a delegate from the 6th Episcopal District.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And we're looking forward to following our fearless leader, Bishop Thomas Lewis Brown Sr., Dr. Louise Baker Brown. And I'm excited. I'm excited again about the exhibit that we're going to have from all of the districts representing the college fairs, the authors that are going to be there and present. And just the general camaraderie and fellowship. I think those things are good for the church. We need it. And that's what's missing. That's what the pandemic has snatched from us and has taken from us, the ability, you know, to hear. I was somewhere, and I'm trying to remember where I was, but someone was playing the organ. And then they began to spank that organ. And I'm telling you, it was beautiful. I was at a funeral of a classmate's mother. And they had a choir. It was one of your AME churches, Turner AME on Cascade.
Okay.
And the organist was cranking that organ, and they did some of the, you know, familiar hymns, and it felt so good. And I leaned over to a bud of mine. I said, this is what we missed, okay? You know, in fellowship and music and worshiping and praising. You know, I don't know about some of these other pastors, but preaching, those that are not back in the pulpit, preaching to the screen, I just dare anybody to try to do it. You know, and to not be so critical of those who have had to preach into a screen in order to convey the word of God without the energy and the exchange coming back. But we got great expectations. We hope that as any general meeting, that we go to the next level of excellence for the church, that every round goes higher, that those persons whom God has ordained will be elevated to the episcopacy and are ready to do the work. I look forward to hearing from and seeing our brothers and sisters who come from the continent of Africa, because they bring it on. They come with their music, they come with their dancing, their celebration, and their outfits. I've already told Bishop Kenneth Wayne Carter and Bishop Godwin Umorte of the 10th and 11th. I said, you got to bring me some dashikis. I don't want none of those mall dashikis. Okay?
You want the real cloth, the real cloth.
Deal. You know, so our General Secretary of Evangelism called me and said, Bishop Carter left you a dashiki here. I have it. I said, okay, I'm looking forward to that. But John, we're excited. there's nothing like a general conference.
Nothing like it.
Yeah, nothing like it. So we're looking forward to it.
And I must say, but just make sure that I get my shout outs in. My colleague at the CME side, Or Spraggin, has been a great help, and we've seen him run. We have a free exchange policy, and he's run several articles of ours, and we always try to share CME materials if we can. And I don't get into the CEB business, but I will say that a beloved soror of mine, the Reverend Dr. Vanessa Burns, is one of your candidates for the Episcopal seat. And I just want to shout out my beloved soror.
Well, shout out, Dr. Burns is a brilliant, hard worker, great preacher, pastor, a friend, and we were in the same church in the 80s in Atlanta. West Side CME Church. And I can't remember, she might have been at Westside when she was ordained a deacon or an elder, but we were there as well. Like I said, all of our candidates are exceptional. And that's the good thing. The onus lies on the delegates to try to from those who have offered, to figure out who is best for the church at this time.
It's always good to have good choices, and that is something.
It really is.
And I watched, and I'll say this: I watched when you did. We sponsored a formal candidates forum for our candidates before General Conference.
Did you?
And I noticed that you did something more extended, and I'm glad to see that. You said this is not a forum, this is a conversation. So you brought them groups of 4 and gave them each cycle, and I appreciated that because I got to see some things that, having run a forum, I know, when people are in forum mode and when they're conversing mode, some things come out of both. So it was definitely, I hope that the CME delegates will watch those conversations because they'll learn a lot about the person.
And so what I did, I brought them in, but I said, this is not a debate. This is a conversation on some issues. What are your thoughts about the church? What's working, what's not? But I'm going to bring each one back individually.
Oh, wow.
And to have a one-on-one with them and really get into, now, why do you want to be a bishop again?
I hope that you get some sponsorships for that, because that type of exposure is, candidates should value that exposure with you.
I hope they will, and I'm grateful as, people tune in and they watch, because I think because you have so many, we have 14. I'm sure you all have twice.
We had about 24 candidates at the last General Conference. At this time, we will have 6 slots in 24, 5 to 6 slots. So who knows how many candidates will declare themselves to run. We already have about 3 who've announced so far.
Yeah, my goodness, that's a lot. But I'm, having these conversations with them, getting to know them. People can look, watch, and judge for themselves, not only the genuineness of it, but the desire of it, and what they bring and what they offer, at this time. I think it's going to be, really exciting. And again, I said I wanted to run my show at least up until the General Conference. And so I'm not sure after the General Conference if CME 151 conversations will continue. It just depends. But I'm excited to at least be running the shows up. I'm going to all the general officer candidates as well, spending time with that. And then continuing to do topical subjects for February for Black History Month, Martin Luther King celebration, Women's History Month, and moving on, towards the conference in that time slot of Sunday at 5:00 p.m. Let me also take this moment, if I can, to talk about my page. It's When We Were Colored. It's on Facebook. And it really is an opportunity. I created the page really just to post historical facts, pictures, and data about our church. But even before 1954, when we changed the name, and after 1954. So a lot of information, photos that I've collected for my book that I mentioned to you are included on there. And what happens, John, is that when you post certain things, people will reflect on it. People will come on and will share memories. You put a picture of a bishop. I remember this particular bishop. One post I put up, I said, do any of you remember quotes from any of the bishops? Actually, I was doing research for my book. And they gave me quotes that only those who heard them and listened to them in live and in
Live
living
would have known
color,
about.
right, would know about rich quotes, not just the
Mhm.
ones that I researched and pulled from speeches and sermons and that kind of thing, but those things that bishops have their own personalities, and
They
they
do.
get up and at an annual conference, at a winter meeting, and they share, pontificate, drop pearls of wisdom, and so I've tried to gather a lot of this, in my book that I'm excited about, entitled "In Their Own Words: 150 Years of Wisdom of the Bishops of the CME Church."
And and at the end, I think our production team, we have a copy of the cover of that book. That book's
Yeah,
slated to come out when?
I'm hope it will be ready by the General Conference.
Mhm.
So I had to delay the book for a time, but we are at the finish line. In their own words, 150 years of wisdom from the bishops of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. It is chock full. I'm so excited. I don't know whether you have a couple of pages that I sent you, but if you don't, that's fine. Yeah, I'm excited about the material, the quotes. Like this is a quote from Bishop Beebe. His great grandson sent us a copy of his one of the
Wow.
final sermons, and in it he said, "I can still preach. I want to die like Vanderhorst. Let me lie down now. My work is." This was in one of his final speeches, sermons, and so I dug deep into the Christian Index, into sermons and speeches and oral history to try to pull from all 63 of the bishops, particularly the last maybe 10 or 13, those that I've interviewed. I've had those transcribed, and I've taken some quotes. Primarily, this is the book of inspiration. This
Mhm.
book helps us to understand what they thought about a number of subjects, what they thought about the episcopacy, what they thought about churches, what they thought about general conferences, what they thought about the ministry, God, Jesus, etc. So it
Think
gives us a
think we
chance
have
to
we have another one. I
yeah.
think this is Bishop
Oh,
Bell.
yeah,
I think
this is
that's
Bishop William Yancey Bell. I'm talking about a tremendous scholar. One of his quotes: "You cannot desecrate and destroy divine gifts for the purpose of gratifying personal desires." Those are the kind. And then what I did too, John, I went through and pulled a lot of newspaper clippings,
Yeah.
and I think that's the archivist in me, wanting to have how they were seen and what kind of articles and clippings were in the newspaper. And I met an angel on Facebook who went through did an index and a search from the earliest bishops, and he helped me to clip and cut those articles that I'm included in there. So it's going to be visually stunning as well, with pictures of them that I collected. But yes, in their own words, 150 years of wisdom from the bishops of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, and the book will be ready by the time of the General Conference in July of 2022.
Great. So you hit archivist. So allow me to change tack. Now
Okay.
you are both you're a CME pastor. You're a member
Yeah.
of the CME Church, the Christian
Yeah.
Methodist Episcopal Church, but you are a proud Morris Brown graduate, and you also work for Morris Brown. So, and I know we've talked, briefly about the challenges that have faced the school, the ups and downs
Yes.
that has gone over the last few years. So tell us, what are your thoughts on where the school is now today? We just published some great news that
You really
for the
did. I
first time in
saw that.
20 years,
Yeah.
Morris Brown now is eligible for federal financial aid. So just tell us about, your own relationship with Morris Brown,
Well,
and
I'll
where you see
do
the
that.
school right now.
I'm happy to do that, and thank you for asking. Well, first of all, I spent my first 7 years in higher education at Morehouse. Dr. Alton Hornsby, who was chair of the
yes.
department, Dr. Hornsby.
Yeah.
He hired me to come and teach history at Morehouse, and the best experience of my life. I enjoyed that experience, and watching you young men just really excel in your various fields of endeavor. And then in 1999, Morris Brown got a new president, Dr. Dolores Cross, and a new provost who was a friend of the family. And the opportunity came for me to go to Morris Brown and to teach history And so I taught African American history at Morris Brown. And then eventually, very shortly afterwards, there was a change in administration in the Office of Student Services. And I was appointed as the Dean of Students. You talk about on-the-job learning experience, but it was a great experience because I understood the dynamics of student activities and student affairs. And so I had that opportunity to be Dean of Students at Morris Brown for 4 years. And engage with some wonderful students, but it was also at the time that Morris Brown was in the latter part of its crisis mode. And so we got through that. It was painful, still is painful, even thinking about it and discussing it. I'm a second generation Morris Brown graduate. Both of my parents graduated from Morris Brown. My mom was a high stepping majorette. They call them bubbling brown sugar. My dad played basketball there. And so many of their classmates are aunts and uncles. My English teacher at Morris Brown was one of my mother's classmates, Professor Hart. So I was glad to be back. And then I was at Morris Brown for 4 years. What I thought my role was to make sure that the traditions of the college remain. You know, that they understood the significance of the beanie that we wore with pride, that they learned the college hymn, the alma mater, the school fight song, that they understood the history of Morris Brown being established by the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And they understood the names of Stuart Wiley and Wesley John Gaines and how they stood up in the basement of Big Bethel AME Church in 1881 after reading a letter from Clark inviting them to come and establish a room at Clark. And Stuart Wiley said, well, if we can establish a room at Clark, why can't we build our own school? And Bishop Gaines stood up and said, well, with God's help, we will. That's how Morris Brown was born. And I believe that because Morris Brown was birthed by God in the presence of God's witnesses is a reason why, even though the school fell on tremendously hard times, unbelievable hard times, that it did not die. You know, it was a Lazarus moment. You know, people had us counted out. People thought we were dead, but we never died. You know, the school was still open, and now we've been resurrected to the point of being on candidacy for accreditation. For now, federal government granting Morris Brown the opportunity to allow its students to apply for financial aid, and kudos to all of those within the 17, 18, 19-year period where the doors were open, that kept the doors open. You got your Dr. Stanley Pritchard, your Dr. Gloria Anderson, you got Board of Trustees, you got the alumni family friends focus group. Then coming up, you got Dr. Kevin James, who has just unlimited energy and has done a stellar job, and the team that he has put to place. You got the bishops that have served now, Bishop Jackson and others that have served, Bishop DeVoe, and so forth. So it is collective effort, the African Methodist Episcopal Church and its continuous uninterrupted involvement with the church and supporting. Morris Brown is a gem. It's a pearl. It is necessary. Its history is rich. It has educated the masses. It has been a haven for all hungry souls. It has produced the world's greatest band, the Marching Wolverines Band, which I am a part of. And so all of this, and so our best days are ahead of us. We're having a latter Job moment, okay? When everything was counted out, our best days are now in front of us. So I'm excited about the possibilities, the challenges that still lie ahead. Financially, the college has to continue to raise funds and demonstrate fiscal stability. The college is landlocked now, obviously, because sale portions of the land were sold off to fulfill the financial responsibilities of the bankruptcy and all. But God is going to make a way, as God has already done, and students will be the better. There are students out and around that need a Morris Brown College. The Atlanta University Center was not totally whole during this time, you know, because Morris Brown was an important and is an important piece of the cog in the wheel. So I'm excited about the future for the college. I was at homecoming this year with my class of 84, and we were just excited, lots of energy, John. So I'm excited, and great things are going to continue to happen.
So we're coming on, or wrapping up, and I
Yeah.
again thank you for taking the time to talk about your book. Which there's another group that we need to put in the chat that you
Okay.
talk about, because you're an Atlanta institution, and so you just don't talk about the church. You also talk about Atlanta, Georgia, and this. Say a little bit about this vanishing Black Atlanta history.
So 9 years ago, I created a Facebook page just to post pictures of old Atlanta. And it's called Vanishing Black Atlanta. It's on Facebook. Skip Mason's Vanishing Black Atlanta. And I'm so glad that I tagged my name along with it, because I really wanted to brand it. This was my perception of those things that are no longer. And so the page has grown from a couple of hundred. Now we have 55,000 members who are active. I'm amazed, John, that I can put a post up and depending on what the post is, somebody will respond. If it's a heated topic, hundreds will respond. And so if you love Atlanta or from Atlanta, went to school in Atlanta, or just, a love of history, this is the page to be on, Vanishing Black Atlanta. Skip Mason's Vanishing Black Atlanta. And so we cover, Nene is on because Nene, of course, she was a real housewife, but Nene went to Morris Brown.
Really?
Nene went to Morris Brown. Nene into Morris Brown in 1985, 86. In fact, I directed the coronation in which she was the first runner-up to Miss Southmore.
Wow.
And of course, she was Sanithia. I can't remember what her name was. Leek is a married name. But yeah, I remember her very well. But thank you so much for sharing this page. We keep it current with news. I'm always combing Facebook for things that are going on in Atlanta that impact Atlanta. Folks post recipes. We do a lot of remembrances of things that used to be growing up in the city, and also it's Vanishing Black Atlanta, Skip Mason's Vanishing Black Atlanta. And we invite you to become a part of that.
Yeah. So you're one of the extended Black Methodist family, and right now we have people from all over the Connectional Church. We have some members from South Africa who are joining us today. It is 10 o'clock in South Africa, and I'm always happy to see folks from the 15th and 19th district coming on. What are some words, Reverend Mason, that you can give to your sister church? Mind you, we educated you, we poured into you, and we know that you are part of the fraternity of the grouping of Black preachers. I mean, we know that you are well known to us throughout the Connectional Church. So, what are some words that you could say? This is your opportunity to say what you to the Connectional Church. We're listening.
Well, first of all, I have nothing but love and respect for the AME Church. I grew up my early years Baptist.
Wow.
And then around the age of 8, I started going to Sunday school at our CME church, West Mitchell. And I fell in love with the church. The Sunday school teacher was pretty and fine. And I was going with friends. And then my mother started coming because my mother grew up Baptist. And one Sunday in January of 1971, I believe, I walked down the aisle and joined Westside CME Church. And that started my life. But then I did research on my family history years later, and all my dad's family were CMEs down in Hazelhurst, Georgia. So I simply say that to say that it's amazing how God moved. The AME Church has always been a integral part of my family. My family members are from Jacksonville, mom and dad. They left and went to Morris Brown, but a lot of my family went to Edward Waters College, one of the great AME schools. When I was at Morris Brown, I used to attend Bethel when it was then Reverend McKinley Young, who I absolutely loved, adored, and his lovely wife, Dr. Young, and Karen, and the rest of the kids. He would always feed us. He would always take care of us. If ever there was an Alpha event, he would come over because he was initiated to Morris Brown. And so many of my friends are AMEs. And I have great respect for the church, for the bishops, your leadership, your history is rich. Every Black person ought to know about, Richard Allen. Every African-American person ought to know about the founding of the AME Church, and the work that you've done in this fight for freedom. And so we all have rich history, but now our unique job and our collective job is to continue to save souls, to preach the word,
Amen.
the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that is non-denominational. And so the AME is going to continue to be great. The CMEs are going to continue to be great. The AME Zions, the Baptists, and all of that. We all have our different traditions. We all have our different rituals, celebrations. But at the end of the day, we are here to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that's what we have done. That's what we continue to do. I so applaud the work that the AME Church has done in preserving its history, and the work that my good friend, I knew him when he was a student, Dr. Roderick Beelan, is doing. I think with your publishing house, it's just good to see him, good to see you and others rising up to great expectations. Look at what you're doing. You just you celebrated, I think, the installation of Bishop. Help me out. Is it Bishop Hemmings?
Bishop Ann Henning Byfield. Henning.
Byfield.
You know, the Lee family from Memphis, that she married into the Lee, so the Lees from Memphis that are related to are part of that group.
Oh, I did not know
Yes,
that.
yes,
But you
yes.
celebrated her. And then today, it was announced that you've appointed the first female dean of the great Turner School of Theology.
That's
I
right.
spent a lot of time over at Turner. Dean Green was my good friend. He's one of the best friends of Bishop Marvin Frank Thomas. And there's a wonderful archival collection in Turner's building, if it's still there.
Yes.
And so just nothing but love and respect, and we ought to value, we ought to cherish each other's differences in history, but come together in brotherhood and sisterhood as children of Christ. And I think that's the uniqueness of all of the denominations and all. And I'm just excited when you invited me to come and to be a part of that. It was an absolute quick yes. To be able to share with you and the wonderful people of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And shout out to all your bishops and Tim Tyler, Dr. Tim Tyler, my good buddy. He was just Mr. AME on the campus of Morris Brown.
Oh yeah.
My Dr. Greg Eason initiated him into the fraternity in the fall of 1982, and my good friend, and now he's my neighbor.
Wow.
Well, he's at, of course, Flipper Temple, and I'm right around.
You're right down the street from Westminster.
You know how that goes. But, man, I'm just glad to be here. And thank you so much for the opportunity.
And we're delighted to have you here. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing you in person at COVID restrictions willing in Cincinnati. I'm going to be there if I don't see you beforehand. And we're looking forward to when the book drops so we can, let people know about it, because it is Black Methodist history and it needs to be shared. So please, this is an open invitation. Well, thank you for the copy. I was going to say we'll run a free ad for you, but I'll take my free copy too. But seriously, it is an honor to have you here, part of my history. Because I remember when I was a student at Morris Brown and you were in the Frederick Douglass Hall, and I saw you over there when I both went over to Morehouse and Morris Brown. So I know you from both places. And it was just an honor to have you.
Thank you. And the Thomas name is legacy at Morris Brown. Know that.
Yeah. There's some stories I could tell about when I went to Big Bethel and they figured out who my father was.
I know it was on then once they figured that out. Yeah.
That's a whole other discussion for that time. But thank you, Dr. Mason. And we look forward to hearing about the book. And we look forward to fellowshipping with you next year at the CME General Conference.
Thank you so much, my brother.
All right. So as we move out of this broadcast, this should be our last live for the year. We, of course, as you know, the late last week, there was a tornado that impacted the 13th Episcopal District in areas of Tennessee and Kentucky. We sent an email about the ways that you, as persons in the AME Church, can help the relief efforts. And we have an update today via video from Bishop Ann Henning Byfield. So before we end this broadcast and wish you all happy holidays, happy Kwanzaa, enjoy your festivities, we also ask that you consider to watch this broadcast and consider helping those this holiday season who just recently lost much of what they had. So we cue this video up for you and also wish you happy holidays.
Greetings to my AME Church family and friends. On Friday, the tornado that hit Kentucky and Tennessee and other states, they traveled 200 miles between the states of Tennessee and Kentucky, devastated many of the cities in our area. Close to 100 people have been identified dead, and they is St. James AME Church, historical church in Mayfield, Kentucky, was destroyed. And Sister Olive Reeves, an active member of that church, was killed as a result of the tornado. In other cities, in Campbellsville, Bowling Green, and other areas around, there was devastation to the cities as well. Many are left without homes and supplies and power and are unable to function. So once again, we need your help. We need prayers, obviously, and we need some tangible help. The basic needs in this crisis are the same. We need water, non-perishable goods, flashlights, batteries, toiletries for adults and children, shampoo, cleaning materials for persons to clean and dig out, garbage bags. We also need the bills and anything that may be helpful. There was a school very near St. James AME Church, and many kids lived in that area and have also been impacted. Drop-offs of donations of the things that we've mentioned can be sent to St. James AME Church in Mayfield, Kentucky. Reverend Gloria Lasco is the pastor. Rep Avenue in Louisville, Kentucky. Reverend June Dorsey, is the pastor. Greater Ebenezer in Clarksville, the Reverend Anthony Lyles is a pastor. Greater Bethel AME Church in Nashville, Tennessee, the Reverend Dr. Walter Reed is the pastor. We also need gift cards. Any amount is acceptable and appreciated. We would prefer Visa cards because many of the stores in that area have been impacted or overwhelmed by the persons who are coming to them. And any monetary donation is appreciated and accepted. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see how you can give monetary donations directly to the 13th Episcopal District through Cash App and PayPal, or to send the gift cards directly to the district. We thank you again for what you have done, what you all doing and will do. We thank you again for your prayers and the calls and the reaching out to us to see that we are okay. Continue to pray for the healing of our people and for the work that we need to do to rebuild in this crisis. May God bless you and keep you.